Dominance. That's what we're talking about today, NFL fans, because you're going to see some guys, one, a team, one, a player that is going to elevate themselves into the NFL. They're coming at you here for the Capital One Orange Bowl. We're going to get to that coming up today on Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I'm your host, former NFL and NFL defensive back, Eric Crocker. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Tracy. Also joined by the great Rob Rang. We're getting into a lot of this college football stuff. And then big bowl game, playoff game. But first, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. But guys, let's get straight into it, man. We got Georgia, we got Michigan, and we're going to start by previewing Georgia's offense. All right. They have a weird quarterback situation, and we talked about it a little bit off air where we were saying, what's going to go on with JT Daniels and you got Bennett? And what can we expect from this quarterback position this game? Is it as simple as Stetson Bennett is guy, and that's just they're going to ride with him?
I think that's the way it looks, right?
Yeah, and that's the way it sounds like it's going to go. I mean, the Georgia coaches have said Stetson Bennett is the guy, which, he's been the guy virtually all season long. So I would be surprised if they went to Daniels, but at the same time, you also see some talent there. This being Stetson Bennett's perhaps final game, and if nothing else, his second to last game as a redshirt senior, fifth year player, then I think that's most likely that it is going to be Bennett. But at the same time, Daniels has the bigger arm. He's got the pedigree coming from USC. I just think that in this particular game, guys, I think that it's going to be a backyard kind of brawling kind of a football game. It's going to be played at the line of scrimmage. I think that fits in pretty well with the decision maker that Stetson Bennett has proven himself to be throughout his time at Georgia.
I agree with you. I'm looking for this to be punch, counter punch all day long, a lot dependent on the running game. We'll see what they can do through the air, but it's almost as though the quarterbacks are directing. They're not the catalyst like we talked about yesterday. So for me, I want to see if A, how many snaps does Daniels get? B, what do they do with it? Because I see them as pretty close to performance-wise to each other. I don't see a lot of difference. I want somebody to take it by the reins and knock that offense up a notch.
Well, that offense is one that has kind of leaned more on the power game, the run game, and they have a good running back there with Zamir White. So what are kind of your thoughts on it when he takes on this, just tremendous Michigan defense that plays fast, they run around, they hit guys. You got Hutchinson pointing at guys and just crushing them, right? But now you have a running back on the other side, and you see all that. How do you think that Zamir White would do in this game?
Well, of course, he plays in the SEC. Has had an awful lot of success against the elite talent in all of football. Is again, kind of like we talked about in yesterday's show, highlighting the Cotton Bowl between Alabama and Cincinnati. And, we talked about how Desmond Ridder, the Cincinnati quarterback, is facing the secondary in college football every day in practice. Well, Zamir White, also nicknamed as Zeus, and the rest of that talented Georgia backfield. Of course, they were going up against the top-ranked run defense in all college football every single day in practice as well. So, with all due respect to Michigan, they are, a well-coached, physical football team with some spectacular talent on the defensive side of the ball. You mentioned Hutchinson, Ojabo on the other end. In the interior, they got some big guys that can play. Daxton Hill plays safety, plays corner. These are all guys who are potential first-round caliber players. So Michigan is loaded with talent. But at the same time, Georgia can run the football down teams' throats as well as anybody in college football. So to me, that is the smart way to start off this preview of this game, is just who is going to win the battle of the trenches.
And it looks like there's the two-headed monster. You have Cook as well in the Georgia backfield. Yeah. They can kind of trade it off. You get a little bit more home run out of one. You get a little bit more grind out of White, I think. But they can both pop for long chunk gains. I think they can move the ball well. That takes the emphasis off of the quarterbacks because the quarterbacks have some young guys to work with, particularly on Georgia's side. The tight ends, I think they're both in diapers still at this point, but that's all right. They can still move the ball. The question becomes, is it balance that you're looking for if you're the Georgia coaching staff, Rob?
It is for me, and I think that's exactly what the best young tight end tandem in college football provides the Georgia Bulldogs is that balance. Brock Bowers, he might be wearing diapers at this point, but maybe he shed them when he was named a finalist for the John Mackey Tight End of the Year award as a true freshman. I mean, absolutely spectacular body control for a guy who's listed at 6'4", 230, but looks like he plays at more of a 250 kind of pound range. Just good speed, good body control, has made some unbelievable catches so far this year for the Georgia Bulldogs. I think this guy's a future first-round pick. And then on the flip side, you got Washington, wears number 0 as a jersey, which is unbelievable when you're 6'7", 270 pounds like this guy is. A true sophomore. But I think both these guys, while not eligible for the 2022 draft class, it's kind of a shame, guys, because I think that both of them absolutely could play in the league right now. And I don't say that very often about freshmen and sophomores, but that's how high I am on these two. Washington, again, just at his size, to me, reminds me of a longtime NFL tight end Mercedes Lewis, with just his ability to be that third offensive tackle. And again, that's one of the reasons why I think that Georgia will have some success running the football, is just because of all of the beef that they have at the line of scrimmage.
And you talked about, some of these pass catchers and some of these guys that aren't able to come out right now. Jermaine Burton, he's another guy, another California guy. Well, he played high school football in California, but another guy playing high school football in California, playing in the SEC. I believe he's from the Atlanta area. He can't come out. He's a tremendous weapon. But they're going to have to not only lean on him, but George Pickens, a guy who was kind of looked at as going to be, that's the guy, right? He's going to be one of the top receivers in the nation. He's kind of dealt with some injuries. He's battled back, played the last couple of games. He's going to need to have a big game and kind of carry them a little bit and be more productive than what he's been. I get it. Missed a lot of time just coming back, and guys are going to be looking to see, what happens with him as he goes towards, the NFL, if he does come out, or if he's already said that he's coming out. But what are you kind of expecting from George Pickens in this game against a Michigan defense that's typically stout?
Yeah, yesterday, Eric, we talked about Jamison Williams for Alabama, who obviously kind of came out of nowhere in Ohio State and, only had a few catches on his resume and then exploded this year. Pickens has a tendency to explode in the bowl games. As you mentioned, he's had some injury issues, most notably tore his ACL during the spring this year and just basically wasn't able to play all season long. But you watch some of his highlights in his freshman and sophomore year, and, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. He is the son of Carl Pickens, of course, a multiple Pro Bowler with the Cincinnati Bengals for years.
I did not know that.
Well, and that's the thing with Pickens. He's even more athletic. And this is, again, I'm I get myself in trouble saying this about a multiple time Pro Bowler, but I think he's even more athletic than his dad was. Has the same type of ability to be able to high point footballs, but just again the body control, the straight line speed. This is a dynamic player who again has a history. Last year, I believe he had 7 catches for 100+ yards. The year before, he was the MVP as a freshman for Georgia in their bowl game. So he has a track record of really stepping up in big games. Had a couple of catches for a couple of long gains against Alabama in the SEC championship game. I think this is the game that he makes that splash, and I think that he will most likely jump into the NFL and may wind up being the number 1 receiver selected this year. His talent is that good.
All right, yeah. Well, we're going to get into some more prospects, and we're going to get to this defense of Georgia and what they got going on there with their draft prospects. But first, we want to talk to you about our good buddies over at Built Bar. And right now, it's the new year, so you know what that means: new year, New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting in shape and getting fit and eating healthier, which mine is, make sure you include a Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easier to stick with your New Year's resolutions because it tastes so good you'll want to eat it. And unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky or waxy or taste like a chemical pill, this one tastes much better. You want to eat healthy, but it's it gets boring eating rice and chicken and all these other things to try to stay healthy. And you want these snacks and some of these things that you end up binging. I love Reese's, but instead of eating a Reese's, I'm gonna pick up a Built Bar so I don't give up on my diet after just 3 weeks. All right, you make it a lifestyle, and your lifestyle should include Built Bars, which are covered in 100% real chocolate. All right, most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has about 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs, and just empty calories that you really don't need. So here's an idea for the new year. Go to all your secret stashes at home, in the pantry, in the office, in the car, wherever, and throw all that out, all that sugary stuff, all that calorie-filled treats, and replace that with Built Bars. So when you are craving a snack or a treat, you can reach and get something that's healthier and tastes incredible still. Even if you are not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. So that way you enjoy this delicious Built Bar, and it almost counts as a workout. So there's more flavors to choose from: coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, which one of my favorites, salted caramel, that is my favorite, and mint brownie, and many, many more. And in fact, they're always coming out with just new limited time flavors. So check out built.com and see what's new. Go to built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off of your order. All right, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, guys, let's get into this Georgia defense. Now, it's star-studded at every level, whether you want pass rushers, interior rushers, linebackers, secondary players. How do you think, or who do you think is maybe the key to really just keeping Michigan like under bay and not doing anything?
Well, at least for me, it all starts up front with the biggest guy on the field, and that's, of course, Jordan Davis. 6'5", 345-pounder. Michigan's going to have to be able to just to slow him down, because he can absolutely collapse running lanes. And, of course, you have the Butkus Award winner, Nakobe Dean, playing right behind him. There's a lot of teams out there who believe that the way that you build a team is right up the middle. And so the safety, Lewis Seen, is one of the hardest hitters in all of college football. So he's kind of the perfect complement to what Georgia has up the middle. And I mention up the middle because we know this is the Michigan Wolverines they're facing up against. Jim Harbaugh, he's going to want to run the football right down Georgia's throat. At least that's what he's going to try to do. And so to me, that's going to be I'm not sure you can even call it a chess match. I mean, it's going to be more of a grudge match, a monster truck rally kind of a thing here than it is a chess match, because I think you're going to just basically see two teams who are just going to be pounding into each other over and over and over again. And maybe that may not make a lot of fans out there happy who are into the kind of the fantasy football element, but for the old school football fans out there, this is exactly the type of game that you're looking for.
It's funny because it makes it strength on strength, as you're talking about the middle of the Georgia defense trying to run the ball. I feel like the backs for Michigan have a chance to get outside a little bit. I think you can probably attack the edges of the Georgia defense a little bit better than you can the middle, clearly. Is there a preference for you, or do you think that there's a better matchup for either Haskins or Corum, the two backs that we're going to see run for the Michigan Wolverines? Anybody have an advantage that you like better?
Well, I think that that Corum, because he has better speed, I think is an interesting player in that regard. I think, again, Georgia's speed in the SEC is just a different level. And so that's one of the things that concerns me for Michigan. But again, because Corum does have the better straight line speed, then I do think that there's some possibilities there that are going to be intriguing. But at the same time, I don't want to have any disrespect to Mr. Haskins. Hassan Haskins has been absolutely spectacular for Michigan, not only this year. Of course, obviously, anybody who watched them against Ohio State knows about the 5 rushing touchdowns, just the best individual performance, arguably, that we've ever seen in the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. But to me, one of the most fascinating things about him is this is a 6'1", 225-pound running back, guys, who is his whole game is running downhill, and you have to have great ball security if you're going to do that. Hassan Haskins has never once fumbled the ball at the collegiate level. That is remarkable. And so again, I think that he's going up against a really formidable front here for Georgia. At the same time, I think that Michigan feels pretty confident that they've got the guy in the backfield that might be able to carry the load if asked to do so.
So do any of these like Michigan pass catchers kind of stand out that can maybe make a difference and take some of the pressure off of the running backs and the offensive line and if you're Michigan, you don't want to be one dimensional. So can anybody threaten guys on the outside?
Well, they had a dynamic receiver previously, but unfortunately, Ronnie Bell went down with a terrible injury early in the season. That just took away Michigan's greatest deep threat, and I really think that Michigan may miss him in this game. But they've had a similarly built player in Roman Wilson. He's only a sophomore. He's kind of stepped up as the season has gone on, and one of the very few teams that is comparable to Georgia in terms of their run defense. And in some regards, they actually statistically were better than Georgia. And that is the Wisconsin Badgers. And Michigan, of course, beat Wisconsin. The only loss in the season was to the rival Michigan State. But when they played Wisconsin, then Roman Wilson was the receiver who suddenly popped off the field, or popped off the tape, I should say. I mean, he was getting 2 or 3 catches per game throughout most of the season. Had only 2 catches, although one of them was for a touchdown against Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. But he had a season best 6 receptions against Wisconsin. I think that is going to be a matchup that Michigan is going to try to exploit. But as we talked about before earlier, Georgia is so absolutely loaded. They got NFL guys at cornerback as well. And so I don't know it's going to be quite as easy to take advantage of that matchup in this particular game.
When you look back at that Michigan State game, the guy that went for 98 yards was the tight end Eric All. And for me, the question becomes, Kobe Dean is a high-quality linebacker, bit undersized against a tight end 6'4", 245. Could this turn into just a possession kind of move the sticks game? Does anything that All brings to the table able to combat the athleticism of the Georgia defense?
Well, I think one thing, and I'm happy that you mentioned that, because I do think that that's something that Michigan, of course, is going to try and take full advantage of, is using Georgia's speed and aggression against them. A lot of, play action if they can, a lot of misdirection, a lot of jumbo alignments and things like that, and then some throws to the tight ends, just really try to mix and move their formations. And, one of the things that I'm always fascinated about with bowl games, guys, is that, college football players are creatures of habits, just like all of us. They get used to how their league calls plays and calls penalties, I guess I should say. And as I mentioned before, Lewis Seen, the safety for Georgia, is one of the pound for pound hardest hitters in all of college football. And I just remember a couple of years ago when Ohio State lost Shaun Wade to a questionable targeting call and how that changed the matchup against Clemson that year. I wonder if Georgia loses one of their playmaking defenders on a big hit, to a targeting call or something like that might change this game. And that might be something that Michigan is looking to try to exploit. Again, to me, Seen is one of those guys that does have a little bit of a track record for some of those questionable hits. And that might be something that Michigan tries to target a little bit to see if they can open up that Georgia defense.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about defense when we get back from this break. We got Michigan coming up. They got some star-studded guys over there, maybe the number 1 prospect in the country coming out of this year's draft. We're going to get to that and more when we come back from this break. All right, y'all, let's get into it, man. You got Michigan's defense, and I know, Rob, you said that Aiden Hutchinson, he was going to kind of have some words for me before putting him last, but I wanted to save the best for last, man. That's what that was. I wanted to save the best for last. And Aiden Hutchinson, I mean, obviously they have a Jobo on the other side. They have, terrific bookends over there on the defensive line, but Aiden Hutchinson, that's the guy that gets all of just the praise, the love. Do you think there's any chance? And Ryan and I, we've done these mock drafts, and last couple of mock drafts that I've done with him, we had Aiden Hutchinson going number 1 overall. Do you think that's the case?
I think it absolutely could be. I think that he's been the best player in college football, at least of the draft eligible players in college football this year. It's going to be interesting to see how he measures out. There's a lot of people out there who are saying he's going to work out incredibly well, but that may not have the arm length that some people would, hope for. I don't care about arm length when you see a guy who is
I was gonna
dominant.
ask you, like, what when you see a guy that dominates the way that he does and is as good, like, what difference does half of an inch or an inch in like this much? Like, what difference does that make in the sense of him being a good or bad pass rusher?
Not if he's proven it against elite competition as Aiden Hutchinson has done throughout his career. I mean, he was a really good football player almost immediately at Michigan, and of course, this year is just taking his game to a whole other level. The fact that he is able to win with speed, he's able to win with technique, and his power is just at a different level than anybody else I've seen in college football this year. You kind of mentioned how he would be pointing out players that he is going to take on, and then just throwing him down to the ground in disgust almost. I mean, it's just been a fantastic showing by Hutchinson. But I think that there certainly are some cases where arm length or height or whatever can be a significant issue, but I don't see that being an issue for Aiden Hutchinson. And it's kind of interesting that you talk about guys who are perceived as being a little bit too short or a little bit shorter arms or whatever the case might be. The Georgia left tackle that Hutchinson is most likely to be going up against, Jamari Sawyer, he's built a little bit more like a guard. He's got kind of a short, dumpy frame, a little bit like another former Georgia offensive lineman, Isaiah Wynn. Played left tackle, was drafted by the New England Patriots in the first round, and has played left tackle for them as well. Again, more than that 6'3.5", 6'4", 320 pounds, kind of a short, squattier frame. Doesn't look like those, V-shaped athletes that you see at left tackle anymore. It's going to be a different matchup here for Hutchinson. Again, he's beating people with speed. If he tries to bull rush Sawyer, this is a young man who does have a little bit more anchor to him. So I think that might be an interesting matchup from an evaluation standpoint.
For me, it's going to be about the hands for both of them. Who gets to where they need to be to get that leverage point? I'm going to be watching that. And I like to watch athletes that have a V. I haven't had that since high school.
So what do you guys think? Obviously, like Michigan, great defense, and we're talking about how they kind of match up against a Georgia offense on the back end. You have guys like Daxton Hill, and a lot of guys aren't sure exactly where he's going to be. He kind of reminds me a lot of Javon Holland, defensive back that came out of Oregon, where it's like, is he a safety? Is he a nickel? Where is he going to play at the next level? When you look at Holland right now playing for the Miami Dolphins, it's like, well, he's a playmaker, and that's all that matters. You look at Daxton Hill, and he has some of that same type of ability, a very fluid and explosive playmaker in the secondary for Michigan. You guys, and I'll start with you, Ryan. You think this is a guy that's going to really affect this game and be able to keep Michigan in this game and keep it to a low-scoring game?
I think if there is, I think it's him. I like the way that he attacks the ball. I like the fact that he can be a jack of many trades, not to the point where he's not good at any of them. Like you said, he can move around. I like dropping into the nickel, and I think it affords him some opportunities to be where he's not expected. But that also goes for the fact that, and I always think of safeties as pairs. It takes Hawkins helping him out, covering him over the top, playing that free safety to allow Hill to do some of those things. And so as long as, like we talked about earlier, if you can't stress super deep on that, I think it allows Hill to play into his game. I'm looking for a big game from him.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, to me, Daxton Hill is the elite athlete in Michigan secondary. And so how they choose to employ him, I think is going to be fascinating because as we just talked about earlier, Georgia is really gifted. I mean, they not only have future NFL guys at the running back and receiver position, but again, those young tight ends, while they are not eligible for the 2022 draft class, they are certainly future NFL players. And that's what Georgia's quarterback, Stetson Bennett, did such a great job is really dispersing the football to all of his different weapons. And so where Michigan uses Daxton Hill, whether it be at that nickel corner spot, whether it be at safety, if they even move him outside to sometimes go against Pickens, I mean, all of those different things I think are in Hill's wheelhouse. And one of the reasons why that he is being perceived as, as one of the most versatile defensive backs in this draft class, should he, as a junior, decide to come out early. So again, to me, that's a player to highlight. I think we've would be remiss, though, guys, if we didn't mention David Ojabo, the other edge rusher for Michigan opposite Hutchinson. This is a guy who is an even better athlete than Hutchinson is. In the opinions of some, maybe he has an even higher upside. Just a spectacular athlete. And again, Georgia is not quite as good at that right tackle position. We talked about this with Alabama previously, as they have been in the past. Another big man, 6'4", 320-pounder at the right tackle spot, but only a redshirt sophomore for the Bulldogs there. So Ojabo has the speed that might be able to make life difficult for Bennett and the Georgia Bulldogs. So to me, again, it's all about playing at the line of scrimmage. This isn't a game that Eric Crocker might appreciate as a former defensive back himself, but for the fans of the blue blood kind of football, this is going to be an interesting one.
Well, there is one matchup that the Eric Crockers of the world will really be interested in, and it's Vincent Gray against George Pickens. We talked about George Pickens and him as a prospect in the NFL. Well, you got Vincent Gray. Nobody's really talking about him, but it's 6'2", 195-pound cornerback for Michigan, wears number 4. And I like the way he challenged the receivers out of Ohio State. We saw how Michigan really just dominated that game. And a big part of it, I felt, was Gray really challenging the receivers at the catch point, down the field. He was being physical with them. How will he defend a guy like George Pickens who has that size? I think that's the matchup, really more so than anything. We know what Aiden Hutchinson is, and we know what these other guys. But Vincent Gray, I think he's kind of the wild card on this defense, and I want to see how he's going to play. That's the senior. He's draft eligible. I think that's gonna be a good one. That's an underrated matchup, I think, in this game that a lot of people aren't really looking into.
I agree with you, and I love that you mentioned just how physical Gray is. As we talked about before with Scene for Georgia and how physical he is as a hitter, could get himself in some trouble. That's been one of the knocks on Pickens in the past, is he sometimes can be a bit of a hothead. Got himself into a heck of a fight a couple of years ago. I think it was in the rivalry game against Georgia Tech, where he threw some haymakers. And so, it could be one of those games where if you get into the head of the young dynamic receiver for Georgia, you get those SEC chants going up in the crowd there, then maybe Michigan can kind of get Georgia off their game a little bit. That's obviously what happened in the SEC championship game, and you saw Georgia basically fall apart in the second half of that game. So Michigan could be looking to do the same type of thing in this one.
And if that battle goes to fruition and it is back and forth, you're not getting clear separation, I think that just opens up the opportunity for Ojabo to come back, use his length a little bit better. That's one of the things that I'm looking for him to really step out and see if he can be that quote unquote other guy.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for today, man. Appreciate everybody that tuned in. Make sure if you haven't already, listen to Locked On 49ers, listen to Locked On Chiefs, and also Locked On Seahawks with Rock Rang, so he tunes in to there every week. But bowl season, the playoffs, they are among us, and these are some big time matchups. We talked about the Alabama game against Cincinnati. That's an intriguing one. We'll know more about how these things play out when we talk to you guys on Monday. But until then, we are out. Peace.